it's very, very off the radar, very, very technical. I know, you just don't understand what this does. And as soon as you do, you'll switch everything.
So it's been about 4 months since my last video. Things have kind of heated up and loads of stuff's been happening. And the Decred proposal that I was working on obviously came to an end after our 6-month contract. And we're currently working towards putting the next proposal together. So hopefully this time it lasts for a whole year. One thing I want to do this year is try and ramp it up to a more frequent basis. Try and get at least one a week if we can. And try and keep us posted on what's going on in the world of Decred and the wider world of crypto if possible. So one of the things I want to do over the next few weeks or few months and as time goes through is actually start comparing Decred to other projects. And this is hopefully done in a respectful way and obviously to just kind of see how it fits in, mainly for the purpose of interoperability, to show that Decred can actually work as a major key player in part of this ecosystem. Now, one of the things that's kind of been happening over the last month is we've actually got a release candidate 3 for Decred 1.7. Now, this is going to make the Decred DEX or the DCR DEX more usable. And obviously, as time goes on, we're going to be starting looking at adding more pairs to it. And within this next proposal that's just been released, version 3 or part 3, it's looking now at kind of seeing if we can get the mesh network working. So anyone that spins up a node for the DCR DEX can actually run all the same order books. So that rather than having these fragmented order books, you can actually bring all the order books into one place, which is going to be really exciting. Before 1.7 and before this latest release of the DCR DEX, if you weren't kind of proficient at code or the command line, it was quite difficult. But well, in the last version, they brought it into the Decrediton wallet, which made it a bit easier, but it still needed to run a full node for Bitcoin, which was an absolutely mammoth task to overcome. So with this next one, we're going to be running in SPV mode, which is a light client, if you like, where pretty much the minute you turn it on, it should be able to just look at your pairs and you should be able to go straight through and rig it all up. And there will be a built-in Bitcoin wallet inside of Decrediton, which is absolutely amazing. And going forward with DCR DEX, they are looking at bringing in Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum pairs and tokens within Ethereum as well. This is still a little way off and there's still a lot of kind of review to be done, but it certainly does look exciting. And looking at their Twitter feed, and if you want to read it on the Decred page, you can actually see how this is all kind of faring up. So throughout these last few months, the world is in a massively changing place, and my life, like everyone else's, hasn't been unscathed by all this. And we've been looking at inflation, we've been looking at price hikes. But during this period of time, we actually, or over the last, it's been over a year now actually, we've been looking at the moving process. We've been looking at moving house from one part of the country to the other to kind of try and capitalize on this movement from working at home and trying to live in a cheaper part of the world, if you like, so we can actually start kind of, making life a little bit better for ourselves. So this has been an interesting world, and what's kind of been happening over the last probably 6 or 7 months is people have been kind of feeling like they are comfortable, feeling like they no longer need to work the hours that they did, and myself included, really. I mean, a few years back, about 7 years ago, I took part-time rather than doing a full-time job in teaching. And this was purely because I felt a bit comfortable and I wanted to try out a few different things, including starting my own online businesses. But more and more people are hedging towards that bet now. Now, the one thing that these inflation figures do say is that a lot of the people that are taking early retirement or going part-time are now finding that fuel bills are rising faster than they expected. Food bills are rising faster than expected. So these comfortable positions where people are kind of looking at their savings and thinking they're going to be comfortable for a long time to come have now become a little bit volatile. And it's a really interesting dynamic, because the minute the labour shortages start to happen, then you start to see this inflation and people that were kind of trying to get out of the system and now kind of being brought back in, which is an interesting dynamic. And I think the reason I bring this up is because all of these things are meant to play in the hands of the crypto market. And if Bitcoin and Decred and all the other crypto projects that are trying to be sound money are really true, then this wouldn't matter, But as you saw from yesterday, where we had this massive crash across crypto and a little bit in the actual conventional markets, it's kind of ringing out that this, unless we can separate ourselves from these and we become sound money, this environment still hasn't been met. This part where your money is sound and doesn't matter what's happening in inflation or not, the value of your money will be good no matter what. So that's why I bring this stuff up, and I think it's really interesting to see how this is panning out. And it would be lovely to see. In many respects, I suppose we had this prior to all this stuff happening. So last year, throughout 2021, we had massive ramp ups where Decred made over 1,000% gains, and Bitcoin, I think it did something like 400% or 500% gains, which is absolutely massive. So in many respects, we actually found all of our profits back then before the inflation kind of happened, which I suppose tells you a different story. It kind of tells you, in actual fact, the narratives that are being played out in the media are actually a little bit behind time. So, our money started to get diluted, and what you saw was all this value in the sound money projects actually go through the roof. So, I mean, we'll see how that plays out. I'm not sure. But that was one thing, and obviously the DCR DEX is going to be a massive part to play over the coming years. And it is important to say, and I know I've said this in past videos, this stuff takes a long time to build, and especially if you're building it properly. You're in the top 100 of the coin market cap now. You're seeing hundreds and thousands of these tokens coming around, and they're gaining so much traction, and they're hitting the top 100, and they're pushing more what I would call legitimate projects down the table. And it's important to realize that these things actually take time. And I see a lot of people, especially on Twitter, getting disillusioned by this. It's, why is Decred not in the top 10, or why is Decred not in the top 20 or even 30? And it's because this stuff takes long. I mean, it's a long time. It's like the DCR DEX. We're now into the second year, almost third year of trying to put this together. And we're probably still another couple of years away from it being where it needs to be functionally. So, if you believe this stuff is going to happen, just have a long-term view that it does actually take a long time. And the good thing about Decred is the security protocol for the whole system is actually really, really solid. So anything that gets built on top of it is being built from those same solid foundations. And a lot of time is taken to make sure that it fits into that. So before we go any further, let's have a look at the Decred Block Explorer and just see where the stats are at. And like I say, I haven't done this for about 4 months, so things have changed a little bit. But one thing I have been keeping my eye on is the ticket price and how much, how many DCR are actually being staked. And I kind of check this all the time. And it's really interesting to see that the ticket price is maintaining high, even though we've lost best part of 50% off of the price over the last 4 months, where we were at, I think we were sitting quite comfortably at £80 per DCR coin. Now we're sat at about £40 per coin. But the actual ticket price has maintained. So we're around 200 DCR per ticket. And the amount of coins that are being staked is actually 8.5 million, which, when you think about it, there's not much left out to be bought. And the total supply is fast approaching this 13 or 14 million, probably in the next few months or so. So that's quite interesting. I said long-term play out. We won't be where Bitcoin currently is, which is approaching 19 million, probably in the next few months also. But we won't be there until about 2026. So what would be really interesting to see over the next year and a half, 2 years, is where Bitcoin goes now that the total amount of mining supply is kind of dwindling. It's going down to about 2 million left, and that's total. We must be about 2 years away from the next halving. So it'd be really interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how this deflationary effect on the coin supply plays out now that it is there is a limited amount of supply. And already we've seen a little bit of that. The fact that it's holding a fairly steady value at about £26,000 is a fairly good indication that there's a lot of belief that price is still going to go up as the supply dwindles. So what else have we got here? The Treasury is obviously the amount of dollars held in the Treasury has actually come down, but the amount of DCR in the Treasury has actually gone up. So we're sat at $42 million, but we're also sat at 756,000 DCR. Now, it wasn't too long ago that was something like 680. So this year has been really good to the Treasury because the price of Decred has gone up so substantially. Over a year and a month ago or something, it was about £18 a Decred coin, and we were looking at 10 million in the Treasury. Now we're up to 42 million in the Treasury, and we've also added another 100,000 coins almost into it in DCR, which is absolutely brilliant. Current exchange rate in dollars is $55 to the DCR, and everything is running good. We're at 627,000 blocks now, so it's been running steadily for almost 6 years, and everything's working really, really well. The one thing that is changing, which was really interesting, over the last couple of months, we saw Jake Yoakum bring out a proposal for changing the reward mechanism. So this went through, if we hover over to the proposals and we have a look at this, if we look in the split, so this is going to change where the miners were getting 60% and the stakeholders were getting 30% and the Treasury was getting 10%. That's now going to change because obviously this vote went through. It's still going through the main consensus and being built, which I think might have already finished. They were looking at February for this to be launched, so I'd imagine it's part of the 1.7 build, to be fair. And what was found on the discussion that was being had is a lot of the price suppression in Decred was caused by the miners. So the fact that the miners were getting 60% of all the coins, and there was actually a massive amount of coins being given to them, what was happening is that every time the DCR price hit a decent level, is the miners were selling it and suppressing the price right back down. And then they would accumulate for a little bit longer, and then they would start to sell off again. And obviously, as a growing project, the community, and you would have seen this on Twitter over the last few months, the community has actually kind of gone, no, this isn't right. This is almost a 6-year-old project, and we should have a more substantial price. We should probably be sat at about £80 as our low now, not £38, which is currently our low. And I kind of agree with that. I'm not too worried about that. I mean, for me, being able to buy DCR at this price is absolutely amazing. And I can see the long-term view, and all I'm trying to do at the moment is get more tickets, as many as I can. And one of the reasons for this, the minute this changes, the miners are then going to go to a 10% of the reward, which in my view will cause the proof of work to go massively down. I do think we'll lose a lot of miners. It wouldn't be, I mean, if we go back and we look at the petahashes, it wouldn't surprise me if we went all the way back down to about 70 petahashes, where just the key players are mining Decred rather than all this. At the moment, Decred is actually a really, really profitable system for miners, and it's been one of the most profitable for well over a year now. So we're currently set at 300 petahashes, and when you look at the attack vectors, it costs us over £1 billion to be attacked for like 1 hour, but the hash rate has very little to do with that attack vector. The reason it's so hard to attack, and this is what Jake's point was, is the staking is actually the solid part of it. The staking is actually what's making it so expensive. So as long as we've got enough mining, and as long as we've got enough proof of work to keep the system going, in actual fact, it will still be quite a hard coin to attack. So they go down to 10%, and in actual fact, the stakeholders go up to 80%. So, you're almost getting 3 times what you currently get. So for every ticket you hold, you're going to be getting roughly just short of free DCR, which is currently about £120, per ticket that votes, which is absolutely massive. If you're holding multiple tickets, and that's at this price, remember. So at this price, you're going to be getting 120. But the minute this happens, it's going to change the whole dynamic. See, my theory behind this was that in 2026, when the coin supply gets so low that the miners start to drop off at that point, was when we were going to start to see the actual price of the coin go up. But in actual fact, this changes the whole dynamic. What this is actually going to do is reverse that theory, where from now until 2026, 2027, the actual price is going to come up because more people are going to start staking, because the rewards are so high. So I would, once this happens, I would definitely imagine that you're going to see 10, 11, 12 million coins being staked, which is obviously at that point just going to push the price up. And as all of these miners that have been collecting actually kind of dilute themselves, that will continue. Now, when that's going to change is 2026, when that reward, that 80% reward, starts to get down to a more sensible level again, when it's not as profitable, because 80% is going to be really, really profitable for anyone staking. So once it gets back down to that, that's when you're going to see the price come back down again, and that's when it's going to normalize out. So the actual dynamic, what I was originally thinking for Decred, based on what was happening with this subsidy, is thrown on its head a little bit. So we are going to see a lot more profits over the next 2 or 3 years because of this. Provided it stays secure and provided that we don't lose too much proof of work. Now, the one downside that I would say from this proposal is it disappointed me a little bit that more wasn't put into the Treasury. And the reason I say this, at the moment it's 10%, which is great. We know we've got a massive Treasury, it's great, and it's only growing every day. But it would be nice to see that have gone up to maybe 20% and maybe see the proof of stake be at 70% or something like that. Because it would be nice to see people earning their way into the system. It'd be nice to see more developers come on board. It'd be nice to see more people come on board that want to work for the system. And the minute you grow the Treasury, so it was, by adding another 10%, we could have got that up to 1.5 million in the Treasury fairly rapidly, I would imagine. So it would have been nice to see that. And it's a bit of a shame that didn't happen. But I understand, at the end of the day, it's the stakeholders that are going to be voting on this, and it's the stakeholders that are going to push this through. And that's basically what's happened here. If you look, you're 8% of all the voters, and then 91% saying, yeah, this is a great idea. One thing this also tells you, of course, is how little impact the miners actually have on our system. So the miners equate for so little voting power because they couldn't even stop this from happening. They couldn't even stop themselves from being diluted, basically. So this is going to be interesting. It's a bit hardcore, and it'll be interesting to see what's going on. There was another proposal that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and that was this one here, Decred Economic Education and Outreach. Now, Amaruni, this proposal actually failed. But what happened here is he was asking for £12,000 to write some articles and do some marketing for Decred. And a lot of the stakeholders like, no, we don't want to spend the money on marketing, we want to hold on to that. And it's not, it's not a lot of money. So what happened behind the scenes is the Decred community did a fundraiser, and they actually, within 24 hours, they raised 156 DCR coins, which at the time, and I'd have to look at this again, but it was close to £20,000. So they raised like £20,000 for Amaruni's project in 24 hours. And it'd be interesting to see what's happened with that. I haven't heard much from this lately, but I was just really impressed that the community managed to organize themselves in such a way that they thought that this was really good. And Amaruni's a really well-spoken guy in the community, and he really understands his stuff, which is great. So I'm glad that the community came together for him and put this together. And there was a bit of a backlash from this as well on Twitter and all the rest of it, saying basically, we need more stakers to kind of bring forward these marketing proposals. And one of the comments that I made is, in actual fact, a lot of people have been selling their coins lately, and in actual fact, if you're selling your coins and then you want this sort of stuff to happen, you're actively diluting yourself, and you need to you hold on to your coins and make sure you're voting and participating, because obviously the people that want to see development happen over marketing and things like that, they are well in the game, and you're seeing this from here. Any interest for development, any interest from the protocol standpoint, they're literally getting 90 to 99% of all the votes, or 96%. This is the DCR DEX latest one that's currently under review, and because it's development, because it's going to add something to the system, it's literally getting 96%, whereas anything to do with marketing does struggle ever so slightly. So before I finish up today, and I hope that was okay, I haven't kind of waffled on too much. If you've got any thoughts and opinions on this, obviously give me a shout. It's always great to hear from you guys. But just to see where the market is and see where Decred is, and it pains me to have to scroll down so heavily actually, but this is my wish list actually. These are the coins that I kind of look at. So I'm currently looking at Bitcoin obviously, and we've seen that almost 10 grand of the price has been taken off of Bitcoin over the last few weeks. So it was sat at, hold on, is that not coming out? Oh, it's because I'm on the wrong chart. Yeah, so it was sat at about 31,000 at its highest over the last 7 days. And if we go back even further, we had 38,000. So, people have lost well over 10 grand per coin over the last 30 days on that one, which, based on the profits that have been made over a year, if you remember, just over a year, 1 month, year, 2 months, it was sat on average at about £8,000, £9,000. So even with that in mind, the profits are still massive. What I tend to look at here is most of the coins that I'm interested in have this hard cap of 21 million. So things like Bitcoin Cash, Monero. I mean, I've got Bitcoin SV on my chart, but it's not something I'm interested in. IOTA interests me because it's a different mechanism, and I look at IOTA because it's very similar to what's happening with Nano. So I do a little bit of research, and as some of you know, although it's had the heck beaten out of it, Nano is actually one of my kind of favorite projects in the space, and if it works, it's going to be brilliant. I mean, my old time holding is obviously Decred, and I love Decred to bits. Now, Zcash last month and the month before actually had a bit of news about they were moving to a staking platform. Now, as I understand it, this is still years in the making, but they've announced that they will be going to a staking platform. They're removing their proof of work, and on that news, you can see here, this was over the 3 months point. This was the November the 25th when they kind of announced that they're moving to staking. They're shot up to £227 just based on that news. And it wasn't too long after that when Jake Yoakum started talking about changing the rewards over to more staking. And I think it's become common knowledge in the crypto space that actual fact, miners, unless you are Bitcoin, like BTC Bitcoin, not any of the others, is actually detrimental to the health of the coin. And one of the reasons that a lot of people think that Bitcoin hasn't suffered so much by the way that the miners are selling quite harshly is because there's only now 2 million coins left to mine. So they're currently approaching 19 million coins. And that rings true, and when people think about 1 million, they think of it as such a small number. It's kind of, they throw it away. But in actual fact, 1 million coins is still a hell of a lot of money. And there's a hell of a lot of kind of, to make that kind of money up and to make that movement. If someone's selling it against you, it does take quite a bit of time, for that pie to get diluted. So I think that's what's happening here. And it was interesting to see, just based on that news, that it just went flying up. Now, obviously, Decred also had similar news, and nothing's happened. We actually, and I'd have to see. Actually, let's have a look when Jake's proposal came out. So it was 2 months ago. And where did we go 2 months ago? Yeah. So based on the news that came out, we went, phew. So we've been in this free form now actually for about 6 months. So we reached our peak way back in, when was this? April April 16th. And then since that, we have actually been declining pretty much steadily back to this root position of about 38 pounds, which if you just make this a little bit wider, you'll see that, just before the year kind of passes out, just before the year passes out, you can see that, that's where we were coming from on that run up from in February. That's where we were coming from. We were kind of like trying to shoot up. So we had a good 3-month run up. And then since then, we've kind of been trying to find our baseline again. And it will be interesting to see what happens, to see if the news kind of works in our favor as we move the staking rewards. But more often than not for Decred, what tends to happen is we move very naturally. So, the coins will be taken out of circulation. They will be staked into the system. And then you'll see, because of the lack of supply and because of the people buying more than they're selling, you will start seeing that moving. However, I'm not really sure how that's going to work with stakeholders selling. I mean, they're going to be getting a lot more money, but from my own perspective, I'm going to be, over the next 3 years now, I'm going to be trying to get as many tickets as I can, probably another 1 or 2 tickets. I know that seems a bit feeble, but that I don't see myself selling just purely because the gains are going to be so much higher, just based on that. And I can't see myself letting go of Decred now. Well, in the short term, definitely not. But that 2026 point is going to be critical now to see when the stake reward goes down again to a more sensible level, what the stakeholders start to do. Once they've accumulated the bulk of the supply, what they then start to do. Interesting times ahead. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time.
I don't know a lot about the Decred.
Kidding about printing.
Flooding the system with money.
Yes, exactly.
And there's no end to your ability to do that.
We will do whatever we need to do to make sure that there's enough cash in the bank.
I wish I was more educated on Decred. Decred is bullish on Decred.